Hey everybody, this is Lexi and thank you so much for joining me for another studio session. The topic of this video is probably very long overdue, but we're gonna go ahead and dive into it today. The topic is studio etiquette. Basic things that the artist should know, whoever the artist brought with them, basic things that they should know, and some other things that could be seen as unprofessional. Studio etiquette for an artist is pretty straightforward. The artist really only has to make sure that he or she shows up on time, shows up prepared and ready to work, has their beats and their lyrics, and just make sure that they're in the right mental state and emotional state to be able to deliver the song properly the way that it's intended to be performed, right? So showing up on time or early, showing up prepared, that means having your beats and your lyrics ready, or being vocally prepared if you're a singer or even a rapper, warming up your vocal cords and making sure that those are ready to go when you get to the studio, so you're not wasting 10 to 20 minutes of your booked, paid for time warming up your vocals. You want to be able to walk into the studio and just go right into the booth. Aside from getting the microphone height adjusted or getting the levels checked, you basically want to be able to walk right into the studio. So that's going to make you seem more professional. That's going to make you come off as a serious artist, as someone who is serious about your craft. Show up on time, show up prepared, make sure that you're in the right mental and emotional state to deliver the song. And in general, while you're there, speak to the people, the studio staff, with respect and be able to communicate with people very well. The thing about being an artist, this is your session, so it is all about you. If there's anything that's not sounding right the way that you want it to sound, it is completely okay to tell the engineer, and the engineer can see to it that something is done about it. So ultimately, you're walking away with something you can be proud of, something that's quality, but something that you can call your own, right? So if there's something that's not to your liking, don't be afraid to ask the engineer to do something about it. Just be mindful of how you're asking the engineer to do it. You want to make sure that you're still speaking to people with respect and dignity. You definitely don't want to mess up that vibe between yourself and the engineer, because once that vibe is kind of messed up, it takes you out of your mental and emotional state, throws you off your game. So now you're not performing the way you should for the song, and it just makes it uncomfortable to be singing for, the engineer who may not be vibing with you after that. The engineer is basically there to make sure that you get the best possible sound recording and the best quality, right? So if something's not sounding the way that you want it, it's absolutely okay to say so. Just be mindful that you understand the engineer can either be your best friend or your worst enemy in this situation. The engineer plays a huge role, so you definitely don't want to ruffle any feathers there. Another big issue that I used to run into with my clients before getting to know them a little better and kind of educating them on how they should be conducting themselves in a session is the amount of people that some artists would bring to the studio with them, especially rappers. A lot of my clients who are rappers previously used to bring, like 5 to 10 people to the studio with them, their entourage. Now, I don't know if they were under the impression that every rapper has to have an entourage because people who have built bigger names for themselves have entourages. I don't know if that's what that's about, or if they just want to flex in front of their friends to say, I'm at the studio, look at what I'm doing, look at the music that I'm creating. I don't know. But the bottom line is it's really bad etiquette to bring people to the studio with you who don't have any concern with how the music is going to turn out, or who don't have any care as to keeping you, the artist, disciplined and making sure that you're staying on task. You, as the artist, should make sure that you're staying disciplined yourself, but you definitely don't want to bring people to the studio who aren't interested in the music, who aren't interested in making it be its very best. You want people who are interested in quality, people who are going to give you, an outsider's ear and tell you if you need to be changing anything, if you need to be saying anything differently. So you want to be mindful of the kind of people that you bring to the studio with you. I've had a few situations where the entourage of the artist was in the session, and as the engineer, it's very distracting to have someone standing over my shoulder trying to tell me how to do my job, or asking me a million questions, or have someone behind me who's on the phone having a full-blown conversation, and just people in the room talking really loudly about things that have nothing to do with the music or future plans for the particular song that's being recorded. As the engineer, my attention is supposed to be on the artist at all times. So if someone is trying to talk to me, which is another issue with bringing entourages into the studio, if someone is trying to talk to me, then my attention is turned away from the artist, and the artist is then not getting that full experience that he or she deserves, right? And it could be something innocent, the people, they just want to know why I'm pushing this button or what I did to get this specific effect on a certain track to make the artist's voice sound that way. And there's nothing wrong with that. But anyone who's accompanying the artist to the session needs to understand that as the engineer, it's my job to make sure that that artist gets the best possible sounding recording that I can make. If I'm not able to hear what the artist is doing, then it's throwing me off my game as far as keeping that connection with the artist to make sure that I'm listening and keeping up with what the artist is asking of me. So let's say that someone's speaking to me. I'm supposed to be paying attention to the artist and the words that the artist is saying and the performance that the artist is giving, but someone is talking to me and distracting me and I'm not paying attention at all. So the artist wants to do something over and tells me to go back to a certain part. Well, now I'm scrambling to find what part that person is talking about because I didn't hear anything that they were saying because I had homeboy talking to me behind my back, you know what I mean? So talking to me from behind me, trying to have a full conversation. That sounded really bad the way I just said it. But it's really important to understand that the engineer is there for the artist. The engineer is not there for the entourage. Now, when it is acceptable to have people in the studio with you, aside from the typical manager or producer, if you have people who are keeping you focused, as I said before, if you have people who are making sure that you have what you need to be comfortable in your session. So people who will run out and get food for you, people who will go out and get drinks for you, or if they want to get something else that'll help you stay in the mood for your session, if you know what I mean. Those people are important too because they're making sure that the artist doesn't have to step away from the booth for any reason whatsoever. So you want those kind of people around you and people that just understand what it's like to be in a studio in general. I've had a few entourages come into the studio and there was literally 5 or 10 of them. And the studios that I work out of, the rooms, the control rooms and the booths, they're a decent size, but they're not meant for large gatherings. They're more intimate and they're meant for, the artist to be in a very intimate, closed space and not have too many distractions. So I really don't like when there are 5 to 10 people who are not the artists in the session, especially if they don't know how to be in the studio or how to act in the studio. I literally had a situation where there were 5 to 10 people, as I said. Aside from the people who were sitting behind me talking really loudly or having conversations on the phone or standing over my shoulder, there were 3 or 4 of them that wanted to go into the booth and actually be in the booth with the artist while the artist was recording. Now that wouldn't be a problem, except these people, they didn't understand that once recording is in progress, if you're opening and slamming the door while the artist is supposed to be performing, those things pick up in the recording. So now you're messing with the flow, you're messing with the progress of the session. So I had to kind of pull those people aside and say, hey, when the artist is here, they're here to work. If you're gonna be in the booth with them, that's fine. Be in the booth, stay quiet, because that microphone is very powerful and it can pick up a lot of things. I've had people who are in the booth with the artist and their cell phones are on ring and the cell phone rings while the artist is probably, and it always happens, it never fails. The artist is usually in their best take and then somebody's phone goes off and it just kills the whole vibe. So to avoid that, if you're gonna be in the booth with the artist as someone who is in the entourage, make sure your phone is on silent or just stay in the lobby if it's too much, or just sit quietly and listen. If you have input and the artist has let you know that it's okay to give input to make sure that the song is turning out right, then definitely you want to be engaged in what the artist is saying, how the artist is performing. The same way that the engineer is paying attention to the artist, that's what you as the entourage, as the friend in the group, that's what you should be doing, making sure that your friend is doing their best and being the best possible version of themselves that they can be. Another thing that comes to mind as far as studio etiquette is people who do have food and drinks, which is absolutely okay to have at the studio. But what a lot of people don't realize is there is recording equipment around us that represents $10,000, $20,000, up to $100,000 in value for recording equipment. So if anything spills or gets on that equipment and it fries it so that it's shot for the rest of the session and it messes up, money-making opportunities for the studio, that's very inconsiderate. So if you have any food or drink, make sure you're staying far away from the equipment, as far away as you possibly can. If there is a lobby, you can go into the lobby and eat your food. Food can even be kind of distracting for the artist if the artist didn't ask for you to get it, because people are in the studio eating lemon pepper wings, that's a favorite, or some pizza, and everyone can smell that. It can be kind of distracting, but in general, if you have food or drink, keep it far away from the equipment, because obviously it could spill and it could cause damage. I don't care how careful you think you are, just don't even chance it and stay as far away from the equipment as you possibly can. Some other annoyances, and I do have some notes just so you know. I'll make sure y'all see it this time. Hopefully that's focusing. I don't really know. But so some other things that make you seem unprofessional when you're at the studio, besides eating or drinking and talking to the engineer, touching things that you don't know how to use. So this is in regards to maybe the input wires for the microphone going into certain gear that's on the rack. At the end of the day, this is not your studio. Someone else is allowing you to come into their space and use their equipment to make sure that they can help you get the best sounding project that they can, right? You don't want to come into the studio acting like this is yours and you can do whatever you want. The session is about the artist, but you don't ever want to ruffle feathers in a sense of thinking that you can change anything you want to just because the session is about you. The engineer who is there, again, if you have any issues and you want something changed, let the engineer know, because I guarantee you that engineer has much more experience with that room than you do. So for you to be trying to touch anything or move anything, that's very unprofessional. It's very annoying, honestly, and you run the risk of damaging the equipment just because you think you know what you're doing, and you may very well know, but at the end of the day, it's not your studio, so you have to respect those who run it and those who keep it in order, right? So another issue would be touching the microphone or the mic stand if you don't know how to adjust it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with telling the engineer, hey, this is a little too high. I don't know how to adjust it. Could you do it for me? That's perfectly fine. As engineers, we would prefer you ask us to do that. I don't mind getting up a million times to readjust the microphone height for you, but I would rather you tell me so I can do it for you, so you're not, touching the microphone. I've had a few people who, when they were new to the studio, they didn't really know how to adjust the microphone, but I guess they didn't want to seem inexperienced, so they were trying to do it themselves. But by grabbing the microphone, you actually run the risk of damaging it. So just tell the engineer, ask the engineer if they can adjust some things for you. And the engineer should be more than happy to do that. Another big thing that can come off as very rude is the engineer, right? The engineer is there to make sure that you're getting the best possible sound recording that you can. So if the engineer tells you anything that will make your recording sound quality, if you're not listening to that correction, you're not listening to any suggestions or recommendations that the engineer has, then that's also seen as unprofessional. The engineer is not supposed to tell you how to perform the song. That's not really the role of the engineer. But if the engineer asks you to come a little closer to the microphone or step away from the microphone because maybe you're peaking or maybe you're not getting enough signal into the microphone or you're singing or rapping too softly, the point is, if the engineer asks you to do something to that effect, if you're not taking heed to what the engineer is asking, then you're actually, again, hindering the whole process, the whole recording process. And the engineer can't get what he or she needs to make sure that your stuff sounds good, right? So you want to make sure that anything the engineer is recommending, listen to what the engineer is saying. They have your best sound quality interest at heart. Other than that, I do have plenty of stories that I could share with you about people who had no experience being in the studio and did some pretty interesting things while in the studio. But for the purposes of this video, I just wanted to point out some major things that I've seen along my career as an engineer that showed that people don't necessarily know how to be or act when they're at the studio. So there you have it. That is my list. That's my description of how you can practice studio etiquette. If you found this video helpful in any way, please give me a thumbs up. Also, leave a comment below in the comment section. Tell me what you found helpful. If you have any additional questions, let me know. I'll leave my email. You can either comment your questions or you can email me with questions for future topics on videos, and I'll get to them that way. If you want to see more content like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and also hit the little bell that's next to the subscribe button, so anytime I post some new videos, you'll be notified when those are up and running. But other than that, that's it for this video. That's all I've got on studio etiquette. If you want to hear some more stories, let me know. Again, I'll share that with you. But thank you so much for watching. My name is Lexi. Until next time. We recommend that if you're getting a 1-hour session, you use that 1 hour to focus on one specific song. Don't try to cram more than one song in that 1 hour because, again, the quality of the song, the overall quality will suffer if you try to rush anything. And you just want to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward when you come into this.